In the lead-up to the 2026 Men's World Cup draw, FIFA President Gianni Infantino awarded a peace prize to US President Donald Trump, and soon after, FIFA announced exorbitant ticket prices for the tournament, pricing out many ordinary fans.
This time, we received over 500 million ticket requests. 500 million ticket requests. 500 million ticket requests. I mean, this is something not... And the tickets are not cheap.
Many people were baffled. Why would the FIFA president openly court such a controversial figure while FIFA snubs the supporters, who are the lifeblood of the game? President Trump's unpredictable behaviour makes it difficult to foresee how the 2026 tournament will play out. But FIFA's behaviour is highly predictable. Human rights groups warn that the 2026 World Cup is heading in the wrong direction, citing unresolved risks to workers and free expression. These warnings echo the tragedies of Qatar 2022. Thousands of workers died building stadiums and infrastructure, exposed to extreme heat and abusive conditions. Most deaths were never properly investigated, and families received no compensation, no answers, and no justice. Qatar wasn't an exception, it became a blueprint. As future hosts, including Saudi Arabia, prepare for their tournaments, the same structural risks are reappearing. To understand why these patterns repeat, why promises of reform break down, and why families are left without answers, we have to examine the system behind it. We track how FIFA's structure enables these abuses, why accountability keeps failing, and what the next decade of World Cups means for workers and human rights in this episode of Photo Evidence. The dangers that killed thousands of migrant workers in Qatar didn't disappear when the final whistle blew. They've moved into the next decade of World Cups. FIFA rewards host countries that can spend big and build fast, but speed comes at a cost. Long hours in extreme conditions, crowded housing, withheld wages, and life-threatening construction risks. Nowhere are those risks more extreme than in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia's 2034 World Cup will be the largest construction effort FIFA has ever approved. 15 stadiums, vast transport links, and Neom, a planned megacity with some 200,000 workers on its construction sites. Migrant workers, who make up more than 80% of the private sector workforce, will bear the brunt of these demands. The country still relies heavily on the kafala sponsorship system, which leaves migrant workers vulnerable to exploitation. They may suffer wage theft and have limited ability to change jobs and even leave the country. Human Rights Watch has documented workers dying in preventable accidents, falls from buildings, electrocution, crush injuries, with many cases going uninvestigated. Saudi Arabia's human rights record raises broader concerns. In 2024, the kingdom carried out a record 345 executions, nearly one every day, part of a sharp and continuing surge. Among those executed was Abdullah El-Darazi, who was put to death in October 2025 for crimes he was allegedly involved in when he was 17 years old. He was convicted after a grossly unfair trial that relied on a torture-tainted confession. The court never investigated his claims of abuse. The executions have also targeted journalists. In 2025, Saudi authorities executed Turki El-Jasser, a writer known for exposing corruption. And public criticism of the government, even online, can lead to long prison sentences. One example is Manahal Al-Otaibi, a Saudi women's rights activist. She was arrested in 2022 and later sentenced to 11 years in prison for social media posts supporting women's freedoms and for sharing posts of herself without an abaya. During her imprisonment, she has reported torture and being exposed to prolonged solitary confinement. UN experts have also warned of foreign nationals being executed after trials that fail to meet international standards. Neom, the futuristic mega-project Saudi Arabia describes as a living laboratory, is already one of the largest construction endeavours on the planet. More than $50 billion has already been spent. The desert is now pockmarked with piling, and deep trenches stretch for kilometres across the landscape. Every kilometre of this build-out demands vast amounts of material and labour, millions of tonnes of steel and concrete, delivered through limited transport links from a port some 80 kilometres away over a single dual carriageway. Within Neom, Trajina, a planned year-round mountain destination with a ski resort, has been designated as the host for the 2029 Asian Winter Games. Despite the scale of the human rights risks, FIFA approved Saudi Arabia's bid for the 2034 Men's World Cup with limited independent scrutiny. FIFA's most valuable sponsor is now Saudi Aramco, the world's biggest oil firm, which has been issued a warning by UN human rights experts over its role in undermining the fight against climate change. FIFA's human rights evaluation was based on a report by the English-American law firm Clifford Chance that ignored key abuses, including limits on free speech and the banning of trade unions, and which didn't speak to a single Saudi activist. Amnesty International called the entire process an astonishing whitewash. And the World Cup that will come before 2034 has serious human rights risks attached to it too. One of the hosts for 2030, Morocco, may not have the scale or budget of Saudi Arabia, but the tournament still raises pressing questions. Unlike in Saudi Arabia, where skepticism largely comes from outside observers, in Morocco, concern is emerging from within the country. Young Moroccans have taken to the streets to question whether hosting a mega sporting event is the right priority, criticising FIFA's extractive business model, and asking who truly benefits from billions spent on stadiums and infrastructure. At the centre of Morocco's plans is the world's largest stadium, a 115,000-seat colossus. Around it, 5 more stadiums are scheduled for renovation, transforming the country's football landscape. Morocco's ambitions come with a hidden cost. Approximately 4.5% of children aged 10 to 14, around 150,000 kids, are economically active, and 6 out of 10 are doing hazardous work, much of it in construction. The scale of the construction is staggering, requiring thousands of workers, enormous quantities of steel and concrete, and years of continuous labour. Critics argue that the enormous public investment in stadiums, transport infrastructure, and other facilities could instead be directed towards vital public services, such as healthcare, education, and social welfare, issues of immediate concern to Moroccan people. Morocco will co-host the tournament with Spain and Portugal, and there are risks to migrant workers in all 3 countries. In Spain, construction for stadium projects like Barcelona's iconic Camp Nou has exposed migrant workers from Morocco, Pakistan, Bolivia and Senegal to unsafe conditions, wage theft and excessively long hours. Some were forced to sleep outside the stadium due to low pay, while others endured shifts longer than 24 hours. Investigations have shown workers losing up to €1,000 a month compared with what they were legally owned. The next 2 World Cups aren't just football tournaments, they're vast construction projects in environments where workers face serious risks and where FIFA still has limited mechanisms to ensure safety, transparency, or accountability. A country roughly the size of Connecticut, with a population then of less than 2 million and only 1 major city, suddenly preparing for the biggest sporting event on Earth. Fueled by an oil boom in the 1950s and later by liquefied natural gas, Qatar became one of the richest countries in the world per capita. And with that wealth, it set out to establish itself on the global stage. So in 2009, with just 1 FIFA-regulated stadium and a brutally hot climate, Qatar bid for the World Cup. What followed was one of the most ambitious construction programs in World Cup history. 8 new stadiums, a new airport, road expansions, new hotels, hospitals, and an entire metro system. The work fell to migrant labourers, many from South Asian countries such as Nepal, India and Bangladesh, who worked long hours of heavy construction in some of the hottest conditions on Earth. Despite well-documented heat risks, construction continued through summers, where the heat index regularly reached dangerous levels. Medical experts have warned that prolonged exposure to these temperatures can trigger cardiac arrest, even in healthy workers. Off-site, investigations documented overcrowded accommodation, late or withheld wages, and recruitment debts that workers had to repay over months or years. These images show the reality that many workers return to after 12-hour shifts in extreme heat. Cramped rooms, limited sanitation, and living conditions never designed for the number of men forced to share them. When employers controlled housing, wages, and legal status, and workers carried debts they couldn't risk losing, reporting abuse was nearly impossible. The consequences didn't end in Qatar. Many returned to Nepal and other Asian countries with chronic kidney disease from heat exposure and dehydration. For some, the work was fatal. A 2021 study by the World Health Organization revealed the deadly global toll of long working hours. In 2016 alone, working 55 hours or more per week contributed to 398,000 deaths from stroke and 347,000 from heart disease. The human cost of Qatar's World Cup construction has been significant, with many deaths and injuries unrecorded or uninvestigated. Even when deaths were investigated, the process was deeply flawed. The Qatari government recorded many worker deaths simply as cardiac arrest. A cardiac arrest simply means that the heart stopped beating. It doesn't explain what caused it to stop. Recommendations for autopsies and independent investigations were largely ignored. Heat protections were minimal. Government rules only banned outdoor work for a few hours a day during peak summer months, and even World Cup stadium projects with slightly stricter safeguards saw a series of unexplained deaths. In 2023, FIFA's own human rights advisors concluded that FIFA has a responsibility to take additional measures to contribute to remedy, including for workers who suffered harm in connection with the 2022 tournament, highlighting that accountability remains unfinished. This followed sustained campaigning by human rights groups calling for a compensation fund for workers who lost their livelihoods and lives during the tournament's construction. When they finally released it, it was overshadowed by FIFA's unveiling of a new initiative, a $50 million 2022 legacy fund. That promised support for youth football, community projects, and a small allocation for a new migrant worker centre. But there was no mention of compensation for workers, no reimbursement of recruitment fees, and no plan to investigate unexplained deaths. The people who built the World Cup, who carried its concrete, installed its steel, and endured its conditions, were left out of the fund.
You may remember the 2015 FIFA scandal. Sepp Blatter and other top officials were arrested over years of bribery and corruption tied to World Cup bids and media rights. The US Department of Justice described rampant, systemic and deep-rooted corruption involving over $150 million in bribes. Cooperating witness Chuck Blazer admitted that officials accepted secret payments for years, including for the 2010 World Cup. The fallout reached the very top. FIFA President Sepp Blatter and UEFA President Michel Platini were both suspended and later banned. The scandal was enormous, but the deeper problem wasn't just individual wrongdoing, it was a system built to protect those at the top. In 2016, Gianni Infantino was elected. To many, Infantino was a clean break, younger, reform-minded, promising transparency and modern governance. But almost immediately he found himself operating inside the same political machinery that had protected his predecessors. A presidency dependent on global voting blocs, and all member associations financially dependent on FIFA. And now, the same dynamics are evident in FIFA's public engagements. Awards to political figures, extravagant ceremonies, and carefully curated media messages illustrate how influence and loyalty often take precedence over merit or principle. In this Instagram post, for example, Gianni Infantino says that President Trump definitely deserves the Nobel Peace Prize for his decisive actions. This dependency system has shaped not just internal FIFA politics, but also how the organisation engages with the outside world. A system defined by how power flows, how loyalty is secured, and how accountability repeatedly collapses. That same system would go on to shape Qatar's World Cup and is now shaping the World Cups in 2026, 2030 and 2034, encompassing countries like the United States, Mexico, Spain, Morocco and Saudi Arabia. Which brings us to FIFA's deepest problem, one that has outlasted every president. FIFA has 211 member associations, more than the United Nations, spread across 6 confederations. And in FIFA elections, each member association gets a single vote, whether it's a wealthy association like England or the United States, or a poorer association like Burundi, often cited as the world's poorest FIFA member. Burundi's GNI per capita is just $190, whereas Switzerland, the home of FIFA headquarters, has a GNI per capita of over $95,000, nearly 500 times higher, even though Burundi's population is almost double that of Switzerland's. Consider smaller federations, those in the Caribbean, the Pacific Islands, or poorer parts of Africa, like Burundi. Here's Infantino in 2023, celebrating the FIFA Football for Schools programme in Burundi. For many of them, a FIFA grant isn't just helpful, it's essential. It may fund nearly every aspect of national football: salaries for staff, travel for competitions, youth programmes, even the basic running of leagues. Voting against the president risks losing access to these lifelines. This dynamic creates a subtle but powerful form of leverage. It isn't bribery, it's structural dependency. The president's control over development funds ensures loyalty, suppresses scrutiny of human rights concerns, and shapes how major tournaments are run. When money flows depend on loyalty, FIFA rarely challenges host governments, even when workers face unsafe conditions building stadiums for World Cups. When Gianni Infantino took over in 2016, he promised to make football global, and he massively expanded FIFA's financial support to national associations. Under his administration, these grants, called FIFA Forward Funds, have increased 7-fold. Billions of dollars flowing directly from FIFA headquarters in Zurich to national associations around the world. The sums involved are huge. Between 2023 and 2026, nearly $1.7 billion was redistributed to member associations. FIFA claims this spending is audited, but many associations submit incomplete accounts or fail to publish any reports at all, and consequences for mismanagement are rare. The result is a system where development money is inseparable from loyalty. Supporting the president keeps funds flowing, while opposing him risks cutting off national football programmes. It isn't illegal, it's how FIFA was built. One nation, one vote, with a centralised financial pipeline under the presidency. This explains why presidents stay in power for decades, why reform is difficult, and how global political interests, including future World Cup hosts, shape voting blocs. These dynamics form the foundation of FIFA politics and are key to understanding controversial tournaments like Qatar 2022 in Saudi Arabia 2034. FIFA is one of the richest organisations in world sport, but almost all its income comes from a single event, the Men's World Cup. The broadcasting rights, ticketing, global sponsorships and merchandise finance everything else the organisation does. For 3 out of every 4 years, FIFA operates at a loss. FIFA is a not-for-profit organisation, and so its revenue is held in reserves rather than redistributed to shareholders. As you can see here, in non-World Cup years, FIFA's financial reserves decrease. The Men's World Cup is the only year when it actually makes money. That pressure drives the tournament to grow, more teams, more matches, bigger stadiums and larger commercial deals. And as the World Cup grows, so do the expectations placed on host countries. Governments are asked to build entire cities, transport networks, hotels and training facilities, often from scratch. FIFA pays for none of it, leaving host governments to shoulder the financial burden. When deadlines tighten, labour and safety standards are the first to suffer. Migrant workers face long hours in extreme heat, crowded housing, withheld wages and high-risk construction. The financial pressures created by FIFA's model aren't abstract. They become human costs: exhaustion, injury, illness and even death. FIFA's structure compounds the problem. As we've seen, national associations depend on FIFA for funding, and FIFA's senior leadership depends on their votes to maintain power. That dependency discourages scrutiny of human rights abuses. Confronting host governments is at odds with FIFA's business model. Reporting is weak, investigations incomplete, and compensation inconsistent. Many modern World Cups require massive infrastructure, and in countries with large migrant workforces or weak labour protections, that construction carries serious risks. Qatar, Saudi Arabia, these aren't exceptions. They're outcomes of the same structural system. Member associations survive on FIFA money, FIFA survives on their votes. Funds flow to loyal associations, dissent risks cutting off resources. There's little evidence of independent audits taking place, and oversight of spending appears minimal. The result is predictable. Human rights abuses repeat, workers endure extreme conditions, families are left without redress, and the cycle continues. FIFA's system prioritises tournaments and political survival over human safety, and unless the structure changes, the human cost will not.